thank you so much for coming on her forum today. I'm so excited to have you and chat with you.
I'm super excited to be here. I love the idea that we have a forum for like women lawyers to come together. I remember when I started practicing at the Supreme Court, I used to sit with senior counsels like Indira Jaising. They used to tell me about how like in the 70s, they didn't even have like rooms for the women. They didn't even have like proper bathrooms for the women in the Supreme Court, leave alone like bar rooms and things like that. They didn't even have like a proper working loo, and how they all had to like spend so many years agitating to get those basic facilities in for women. And I think this is just like a step forward, like first their fight was to kind of get that, and like our thing is to just kind of, integrate more as a community and stand by each other more. So I think your forum is really great. I'm really happy to be on it.
Thank you so much. I mean, stories like that are definitely the reason why I even came up with this idea. Obviously having people like you, I think is going to help a lot of people who are watching. I wanted to start by introducing you. Ambika is a lawyer and environmentalist and animal rights advocate in Bombay. She did her law from Bombay and now is a member of the Maharashtra State Animal Welfare Board and a consultant for Tata Trusts, the Azim Premji Philanthropic Initiatives and the Good Food Initiative in Bombay. She's actively been involved with some really important PILs over the past couple of years, and that's what we're going to be touching upon soon. So moving to my first question, I wanted to ask you to begin with how, was this a field? This is an amazing field of law, so relevant today more than ever, and definitely one that is not the norm to take. A lot of people don't tread down that path. So I obviously wanted to know how you decided to do that.
So, like environmental law and animal rights law, for me, it was always like a passion. I always cared about the environment from the time I was maybe like 13, 14. I stopped using plastic bags. I tried to be as sustainable as I could. This is just who I was. And then I decided to go into law school because I knew I wanted to do NGO work. I always thought that I would end up going into human rights law. Strangely, that's what I always imagined. And when my mom gifted me like a book on constitutional law, she actually wrote like, be the eyes of the blind, the strength of the weak, and protect the vulnerable, my daughter, or something like that. It was like my Didi Basu, and I loved it. I was so like proud of owning that, my mom writing that down. And then like as I got out there and I started practicing, I realized that there were already many lawyers who would take on human rights cases. Now I know that you can never have enough people who do anything, but there were so many lawyers who would take on human rights cases. There were established institutions. But on the environmental side, I saw very few lawyers. And on the animal rights side, I saw maybe like one person taking on something as a PIL occasionally. I didn't see that like strong system of, like, okay, here are 5 people and we are animal rights lawyers, and even for the environment, that system was there, but it wasn't as well built as the human rights guys. Now, I kind of come from that Eastern philosophy and belief where I believe that all life is equal. So I believe that my life is of the same value as a pigeon's life, which is the same value as an elephant's life, and that's the same value as a cow's life. So given that belief, I thought that I should dedicate my time to protecting the most vulnerable. Now, I later realized that in protecting the environment and the animals, we're actually protecting ourselves, because we realize now that biodiversity is what's keeping our planet going. Green spaces are sequestering carbon, so but now when I began law, I didn't realize that, oh my God, and actually in protecting the animals, in not farming them badly and all these things, we're actually protecting ourselves as people. I didn't know these things, but I knew that I wanted to do whatever I could for somebody who was in a bad situation or who was vulnerable and who was being abused, and do what I could to protect them, which is why I went into this space. So it wasn't a planned thing for me. It was just something that I fell for. I used to work with a law firm. I filed my first PIL, and then before I knew it, I was stuck doing only PILs, And then like the second my number got out as somebody who like helped the environment and animals, people started calling me from across the country saying, hey, can you do this? Can you advise here? Can you fly to this court? Can you brief this council? Like, I have this problem. Can you help me go to my city council and ask for better waste management? And the funny thing is that sort of like, it's been a great journey, but it's also been a challenging journey. And, I later learned so many lessons about, like, how to do this kind of work, and also how to like sustain myself and things like that. But for me, my choice to become an animal rights, environmental lawyer, climate activist, these weren't things that I voluntarily like chose, thought about, and did. It's just like, oh my God, there's nobody doing this. I've got to do it. And then I was there, and then I was doing it. And then before you knew it, that became who I was. And now it's been 10 years. And I think I wouldn't have wanted it to go any other way. But also, like, when I was a kid, I like watched Erin Brockovich, and I was like so inspired. Like, I thought it was so cool, that she was doing that. And then I read Shirin Ebadi's book, Iran Awakening, and she was a woman who was a human rights lawyer, and I was so impressed by that. So all my role models, and then when I met Indira Jaising for the first time, and I don't agree with her on so many things, particularly like on the cow slaughter issue, because like I said, I believe that all life is equal, and she was actively fighting for some of the beef bans and things like that, that they should be removed. So I believe that no animals should be killed, because we don't need these horrible systems. But just sit with women like her. I was like always, even as a little girl, I was so impressed by these women who like stood up on stages and they spoke and they fought for what was right and all. So it was like I was damn inspired by that. I never really realized that I would become one of them myself, because in my head I still think I'm like a 6-year-old that's like looking at the world going like, whoa. But it's like sometimes in life when when a situation needs a hero, like when a situation needs somebody to say, you know what, I'm going to make this my life's mission, and you can't find that person, you just become that person. So I just became that person.
That's amazing. And like you said, like it was driven by passion, and clearly you were needed in that space. And so, and you ended up there. So that's amazing. Moving to like your field of expertise, I know that, you're in a field of law that is so important and like represents the part of society that is literally the only part of society that doesn't have a voice for real. And I think that even though India, I mean, there is the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, and you can of course touch upon briefly in terms of what legislations exist. But do you think, where does the problem really lie? Does it lie in the fact that we need better laws, or is it a stronger penalty, or is it in fact the issue of stronger implementation?
All three. All three. Because if you look at our laws, like the fine is still 50 rupees to beat up an animal, So we started this campaign in Delhi called No More 50. And, one of the members of parliament, Poonam Mahajan, who's also like my personal role model, and she was the chair of the State Animal Welfare Board. She's also one of my mentors. She moved a private member's bill saying that we need to increase the fine. Through her good offices, we got multiple members of parliament to write in, to the Minister of Environment and Forest to say, hey, 50 rupees is kind of ridiculous and it meant something in 1960, but what does it mean today? It's nothing, and you need to change this. But the government hasn't changed it, and I think that like animals don't vote, and they're like, so basically it's very easy to just ignore their issues, which is why like it's so important for us to come together and do something. Implementation is also a huge issue, because the thing is, I don't think we have a lack of goodwill people, because on a very basic level, people are all good, So if I showed you what was happening in a slaughterhouse, you probably wouldn't want to eat meat. If I showed you the impact of certain mining operations on forests, you would probably turn around and say, no, I don't want this to happen, like not in my name, this should not happen, But at the same time, there is also a lack of knowledge, like people don't know what they should do, what they can do. They don't realize that there is a Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. They don't realize that they can activate change. They can do something, So there is an issue of the penalties. The law covers certain things, doesn't cover certain things, although I would say that the laws in India are better than the laws in most parts of the world. But I do think that they can be made stronger, they can be made better. I also think that we should be able to make our penalties stronger. And I think that there needs to be a bit more awareness, you know, particularly like amongst the judiciary, amongst the police, amongst people like you and me and everybody, because I also didn't have anybody to teach me what were animal rights laws. You know, one day I decided I wanted to file a PIL. I wrote an email to Mrs. Gandhi, Mrs. Maneka Gandhi in Delhi. I never thought Mrs. Gandhi would reply in a million years. I thought she was a super busy MP who did everything she could for animals. But I didn't think like some junior counsel who's 24 years old in Mumbai is going to get a response from her. And within 3 hours of sending the email, she replied to me with all of these instructions. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. This is the book you need to get. This is what you need to read. And I was like, whoa. And then I spent the next 1 month literally just studying everything. And then I wrote my second email to her, you know, just because I didn't want to seem uninformed, you know. And then I realized, so I literally had one person in the national capital who I'd never met and who was guiding me over email, you know. So the point is that, is everybody so lucky that they end up writing to Mrs. Gandhi and getting her advice? Maybe no. There are a lot of good people out there who see something bad and they're like, if only I knew what to do, I would do it. So I think that there are these key issues with animal rights laws. And I think that a lot of NGOs are doing what they can to change it. So they're advocating the government for policy change. They're actively working with schools, working with government officers, working with police, working with magistrates, trying to like explain what the animal rights laws are, what constitutes as cruelty, what doesn't. So the NGOs are doing what they can. I think we need more help from civil society, from the government. And this is where us as lawyers play such an important role, because from one PIL, we can change an entire system, you know. So that's kind of, there are loopholes, there are issues, but then there are also amazing groups like us who can change the whole situation if we want to.
Exactly. And I think that what's important about what you said is also clearly shows that this is a low priority in India, right? Whether it's a lack of, I don't know, empathy from a lot of people, or, you know, a lack of action from people in power. Like you mentioned that you, you know, the initiative you took against the fine, which is 50 rupees, which is obviously not going to drive change if that's the kind of penalty that exists. But you reached out to somebody in power and you said that it still hasn't changed. So I'm wondering if you could like address why you think fundamentally that hasn't changed, because clearly there is, you know, people trying to do it and people with the strength to do it.
See, animals just don't vote. You know, that's the truth. Like, so we need to build more of a community around the movement. We need like 10 people like Mrs. Gandhi. We need 10 people like Poonam Mahajan, you know. We need 10 people like both of them who care for the cause and will actually activate for it. We need 50 Ambika Hiranandanis, because, you know, it's like little work league. Like we need the movement to grow. We need more people to stand up and say, no, this is not happening. This is my issue. See, what I tell people who care for animals, organize. Make a group of 500 people, go to your local MP, sit down and say, hey, this fine is $50. We need this to be changed. If every local MP gets pressured by 500 people in their constituency to say, hey, what's going on? They're going to go back to Delhi when Parliament is on and go to their minister and say, look, we have like 500 people in our constituency who message us day and night saying, what's going on? You need to do something about this. But the problem is that we don't have that. So the Hindi word for it, and I learned the word like 7 or 8 years ago, is Jan Jagrukta, which is awareness basically, which is what one of my fellow activists from Chhattisgarh, because I used to go to Bilaspur to appear in the High Court there, because there used to be temples that used to conduct animal sacrifice. So when I went to Bilaspur, I met all of these, like, you know, all these activists and stuff who only spoke in Hindi. So there I was, you know, trying to explain rules and laws to them in English, and they're trying to explain things to me in Hindi. And then this guy looks at me and he says, Didi, aapko nahi malum hai, maine 10 saal ke liye, you know, and he took the name of the villages. He said, wahan pe jan jagruk. You realize that we need everybody. We need people at the policy level. We need people at the legal level. We need people in the police. We need the average citizen who does their own thing. You know, the average citizen who is an IT professional, a graphic designer, somebody who sells really pretty earrings. But we need all of these people to say, okay, I've got my day job, but I will give 1 hour a week to advocating for this fine to increase. And whether that means writing to your local MP or tweeting the Ministry of Environment and Forest, we need more people to say, hey, this isn't happening. We need, and I'm not trying to say that we all need like a global revolution or like a national, but we need more people to stand up and say, no, you're my government, I'm holding you accountable, you've got to do this. And the day people start questioning their legislative representatives, and they start saying we want change, is the day that there will be change. But there aren't enough people questioning. And I believe the reason why there aren't enough people questioning is because people don't know that they can question.
Absolutely, I agree. And I think what you're saying about people caring and wanting to do things, like, I think that reminds me a lot of like the current like trigger happy sort of environment where people are affected, right? Everyone is sad to see something and you could show me and I'll be affected by it, but it really comes down to what you're doing after seeing that video, right? Are you just closing your phone and moving on, or are you writing that letter or advocating for it? So I think that's really important. And that brings me to like my next question, which was about what you did in that context. And I know a lot of my friends who have spoken about this in the past and really appreciated it when it did happen. And I know that you were part of the movement that led to the ban and the case, the judgment that led to the ban of the Victoria's or the horse-drawn carriages in Mumbai. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about any challenges you faced during that case and about what legal aspects you had to deal with in that case.
Well, the whole case was just one giant challenge, if I'm being honest with you. Every like I didn't know anything, right? Like I was all of 26. I went to like the managing partner of my then law firm, Manilal Kheranwala. So I went to Vikram Trivedi and I said, Vikram, so we need to file this PIL, and like here's Mrs. Gandhi. You must have heard of her. She's explained all these things to me, and let's do it. And so he said, okay, fine. He listened to me really sweetly. And he's like, okay, let's sit tomorrow and see what data you have. Now, he was obviously very nice and encouraging, but he was also like, okay, let's see what this girl has to offer. I don't think he was expecting it. But the next day I came into his office with 500 pictures, all the laws flagged up, and like 50 like not 50, but like 7-8 RTI applications, everything all explained. And I came with a really bad draft of a PIL. So this was what I'd done myself. Like I Googled literally online how to file a PIL free draft. And then what, and this is Google like many years ago. I won't reveal how old I am. So that's what came up. So I just based it on, I Googled online how to file a PIL, and I made this really bad draft. So I'm sitting with this like, this managing partner at this law firm where I finally gotten a job, and I'm like, sir, so basically here are my RTIs, here are my photos, here's my this, here's the law, here's this, and here's my PIL. So he's like, research, very good. PIL, we need to work on it. He was just impressed that this girl went out there and she did everything. So then we filed it. Organizations like PFA and PETA intervened. Mr. Trivedi hung on to the case and worked on it like super dedicatedly for so many years. Then we briefed another counsel called Shiraz Rustamji, and this other lawyer called Archit Jekar also filed his wakalatnama. We had some amazing lawyers who came on and they took on the case totally pro bono. And there was a time when like I didn't know anything about filing a PIL. I didn't know about like how much it would cost, for example. So filing a PIL doesn't cost anything, but like but like your photocopies, for example, an affidavit, if you're showing 10 pictures of wounds on horses, like I didn't realize that like I had to like raise the money to pay for those copies. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't realize that the copies for the court had to be color copies and the copies for the other side had to be color copies. And when you're like a young lawyer who's 27, 28, and you're really not like taking money from home and you're doing this all by yourself, then it's really kind of difficult to study. You're like suddenly, oh my God, like I need to like pay for all these things. And so I learned all those lessons, so through that PIL, I learned lessons that gave me the knowledge that I needed to fight all of the big PILs that I did in the Supreme Court, like the elephants case and things like that. Like I knew the rules of filing, of service, of what is an affidavit, what is a reply, what is a rejoinder, because you don't learn those things in law school. So I actually ended up learning everything through that case, and I really thank God that we got a good order. Justice Oak, who was such a futuristic judge, in the Bombay High Court, like he literally, in Delhi, the government had prohibited the horse carriages. They had rehabilitated the horse owners, and there were many reasons for it. So, for the one of the most basic reasons is that horses don't live for very long. When they walk on concrete and tar, they end up dying very early because of osteoarthritis and laminitis and all these like major diseases. And then so basically Justice Oak passed a judgment along those lines, and that really like helped us along. And I thought, no, see, this is the thing of like when you're a rookie lawyer and you get this amazing like order, you think, okay, the case is done, the horse carriages are prohibited. But no, that's your order is your first step. Then you have to go to the government to advocate with them to pass a policy in line with the order and rehabilitate the horse owners. See, because also it's like we are compassionate people. We have empathy. We knew that we wanted to prohibit the horse carriages, but we didn't want poor people who are like, relying on the carriages to lose their jobs either, right? So we started advocating with the government to actually help those people and, release the scheme soon so that they can also get good jobs. A lot of the horse owners even told me things like, agar koi stable kaam mil jaye, because how is doing a horse carriage, using a horse carriage stable? It's not, right? Tomorrow the horse falls sick, it's raining, you don't make money. But if they had like a small stall, to sell things, something like that, they would be okay. Then I even found out that some very entrepreneurial guy went to the government and pitched having battery operated carriages, and the government has now gone for that. So like last year, I was just on the road driving and I saw like a battery operated carriage go by. I got so excited. I took a photo of it. I Instagrammed it. I told all my friends. I was like, guys, check this out, And this idea didn't even come to my head. I just thought like the Delhi order said, okay, that they should have the hawkers licenses. That's exactly what so that's what we argued to the court, that my laws consider hawkers licenses. But the court said, rehabilitate them. Then we went to the government and we gave them the Delhi order. So obviously the government also thought, okay, fine, this is what Delhi's done. So they also considered that only, like cash compensation or this. Then suddenly I saw these. So my point is, it was through this case that I learned everything. And it's a PIL is a very challenging thing. So I never advise somebody that be a lone crusader and take on a PIL yourself. No. Take on a PIL with a group of 10 people. One person says, I'll fundraise. One person says, I'll research. One person says, I'll work with the government. One person says, I'll go to the court as a lawyer. So make a diverse group and then do it. With the horses PIL, it was like, we got more and more people on board. PETA came on board, PFA came on board, many NGOs came on board. We were able to do all that. But we didn't have that full-on proper strategy or anything, because the person who was running around doing this stuff was me. And that person didn't know what it entailed. I just knew this is very sad, it must be stopped. This is very sad, it must be stopped, but no one must suffer in the bargain. So I must do this, but I didn't know anything about how to do it or how the government filed an affidavit in reply, how to file it. I didn't even know what a rejoinder properly was. These are not very good things to say, but it's the truth,
No, that's very nice of you to say, because I'm sure it's reassuring for somebody who has no idea and wants to do it anyway, which is, I guess, what you did. So I think that's amazing. And thank you for being honest. What you said about, in India and about perception and things like that, I think it's a very gray line, because very recently, literally days ago, was when this picture came out, and there were a lot of news reports about an elephant who was fed a pineapple filled with firecrackers. And I wanted to talk to you because for the past couple of days, I've been trying to read about it. And then recently, there have been news reports that actually it wasn't somebody feeding the elephant crackers out of malice, but it was in fact traps for wild boars that are set up by farmers. And that is obviously done for them to protect their crop. And that leads to a lot of other issues, right? That sheds light on other issues like farmer welfare, right? And farmer welfare and reform for farmers. So in that case, that it's really tricky because it's a gray area, and both parties deserve the attention. So what is your stance on that?
So I'll divide this topic into three things, okay? First, I'll talk about the wild boar. Wild boar, monkeys, all of these animals in different states get classified as something called vermin, okay? And then the government can kill them. The government basically gives permission to anybody to do whatever they want to kill them. Okay, now my point is that I think that's really unethical, because the reason why these animals are being killed by farmers is because we're cutting down the forest. Okay, so these animals have no food to eat. Plus, in the forest, we're practicing monoculture. So we're using crops that are like of financial value. We're not like, so you may walk into a forest and you may look at me and say, Ambika, this is totally green. It's a beautiful forest. But I'll say, Neha, where are the plants or where are the trees that the animals can eat? So it may be a beautiful green forest, but what can the poor animals eat? There's nothing that they can eat. So basically the issue is there's 2-3 issues. First off, if we want to address the issue of the wild boar, we need to stop destroying our forests so rampantly. We need to implement better measures to protect farmers. For example, like in Africa, in Kenya, they don't kill the elephants. They make 2 feet thick sort of like a fence around all the farms of chili plants, so the elephants don't even go in there. There are innovative methods that can be used to keep these animals out. It's not right to have any animal have their mouth blow up or their stomach blow up or something. It's horrible. Like, that can and must be stopped. See, now when we talk about farmer welfare, we have to understand that what's happened is the wealthy have taken everything away, and then there are 2 very poor groups, animals and farmers, who are fighting for what is left. We need to change this paradigm, because the truth is, cutting down our forests means the wild boar go into the fields. But we also don't realize that cutting down our forests is we're sort of looking at climate change and we're saying, hey, come here a little faster. Who suffers greatly with climate change? Farmers. Because their land grows dry, there's erratic rainfall, their whole life is dependent on rainfall. And the saddest thing is that so many of our farmers don't even realize that this is happening, So what's happening is that the 2 very poor sections of society, very vulnerable, the wild animals and farmers, are pitted against each other. What we need is policy reform. We need to prohibit the killing of, wild boar and monkeys, and we need to understand that this is a symptom of a much larger problem. We need to stop cutting down our forests, and we need to prevent as much as whatever we can do to prevent this, this climate change, this ticking time bomb. We need to stop cutting down our forests. We need to start reforestation, like going into old mines and developing forests over there. There's so many steps like this that we really need to take. And now as regards, so now I've addressed the issue of this. Now on the farmers' point, we need to have quick policies that if a farmer's crop gets eaten up by wild animals, they get compensated for it very quickly. Because for those poor farmers, they're reliant on their farms for everything. They're in such a challenging situation. Farmers are committing suicide because they have so little. I mean, it really, the plight of farmers in India makes your heart go out. And there isn't one activist who would say save the wild boar at the cost of the farmer. But every activist who's a genuine, futurist would turn around and say that there are great methods to save the wild boar and save the farmer. And that's in the interest of the farmer and the interest of the wild boar. Because if you save the wild boar, you save the forest. If you save the forest, you save us. So, it's all interlinked. Now, as regards the elephants, for some reason, there are many states in India that keep elephants in captivity, whether it's in a temple or it's for tourism. Now, I don't think, people say it's religion, people say it's culture. But when we really look at the tenets of any religion, and I'm not talking about just Eastern religions, I mean all religions, they all practice compassion. The tenets of any religion will never say be cruel to an animal. It's human interpretation that's gone awfully wrong. So honestly, picking up animals, capturing them from the wild in Assam, bringing them into certain states, keeping them in temple backyards. I've read reports of the Animal Welfare Board of India where there are 50 elephants in one temple backyard, all 4 legs chained. I watched a documentary called, Gods in Chains, which was done by an NGO called CUPA. Wow. When you look at all of these things, you realize that, this is not what our religion intends. This is not what our religion intends. This is human beings who are making huge, colossal mistakes, and animals are suffering as a result of it. which is why when this happened, I immediately spoke to friends of mine in the wildlife department. And I said, guys, what do you think has happened? And then they explained to me that, this could be a bomb bait, or it could be somebody who intentionally fed the elephant, which is why in my letter to the government that I drafted and I shared on Instagram and I asked everyone to send, I didn't at that point say that, hey, like, we know it's an offense, it's some great human conspiracy. No, I just said that we demand justice for what has happened to this elephant, and also that all the other poor elephants, like sometimes, like what happened in America, it's like one person lost their life and then that person became a beacon of hope for everybody. And when Nirbhaya went through what she did in Delhi, she became that beacon of hope for all women. I'm saying here there's an animal who, poor thing, she lost her life, but let her legacy not just be that one farmer who put this bomb, got caught and went to jail. No, that every single elephant in the state of Kerala, in fact, even in Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, all the southern states which keep animals in temples and for parades, or in North India where they're kept at like the Amer Fort and things like that, let her legacy be the rehabilitation of these captive animals. We don't need an elephant in a temple to bless us. Like, God is not saying that I have put this elephant there to be in captivity to bless you. In fact, like every faith says that all that you need to do is pray from the heart and not out of practice, so it's all, we've skewed everything, and because of our skewed ideas, animals are suffering.
I was going to say that you're so right. There is so much hypocrisy. For example, I'm so glad you mentioned what you said in your letter, because I clearly remember a number of petitions that were being sent around, which were purely on the basis of punishing the person who's responsible for this malicious act, right? But there was no proof of that. And that's what I think a lot of people now are trying to like draw attention upon, that there's a really gray area and there's more to it. So people, again, like I said, have become trigger happy and sharing about this elephant, but nobody's really going down to the cause of the issue, right? Which is much larger, which is about deforestation, which is about farmer rights, and of course animal rights, which is all interlinked. So I think that that's really important that you mentioned that.
And the benefit, and if the animals benefit, the farmers benefit, the environment benefits, we benefit. If the farmers benefit, the animals benefit, the environment benefits, and we benefit, and if we benefit, all these things happen. So my point is, there's such a strong link between everything, but I still see, I feel that, I don't know, like just because it was an elephant who got like, like the bomb in them doesn't mean that like it's okay for like for it to happen to like a dog, for example, because like my friends who are in the wildlife space, they tell me things like, Ambika, you're shocked today. Like when I was in Himachal, I saw this happen to a dog. When I was in Uttarakhand, I saw this happen to a cow. And I was like, oh my God, because see, I'm not a wildlifer in that sense. So I'm not like out in the field trying to understand, like tracking footprints. I'm not doing all these things that my wildlife friends are. So they explained to me, they're like, you have no idea how bad this is for all animals when these bait bombs are kept out there. And I don't know if it's true, but I saw a post on India Today which said that today, like a child ate something that was like a bomb or something like that. And I don't know if it's true. It's just something I read. It could be totally like fictitious, but my point is that you're going to keep like a bomb in a fruit outside of a field, and like anybody can get hurt with that. It could be me, it could be you, it could be like my dog, it could be like anybody. It's so ridiculous to do that.
So it really is a chain reaction. That is true. And like you've said, this is feeling for animals is a very universal feeling, and we'd like to believe that everyone generally does feel that way. So is there anything that you could share that someone sitting at home, so I mean basically activism for a non-lawyer sitting at home, what do you think can practically be done? Like a few points if you have at the top of your head.
We're talking about just animals. See, everybody has a skill. Not everybody should get out there and file a PIL. Okay, because as I've said, there are so many, like this isn't like, not everybody's a lawyer. That's not everybody's superpower, but everybody's got something, right? So if you're a web designer, call your local NGO up and say, hey, can I help you like design a web page? If you're like, if you're just like staying at home and you have like say 6 months off that you've taken from your job and you're on sabbatical, you can be like, hey, can I maybe help you host a fundraiser? If, say, for example, if there's somebody who is working like a 9 to 5, which turns into a 9 to 8, as so many jobs do, like call up your local NGO and say, hey, can I volunteer on Sundays? And maybe I can come in for 2 hours on Sundays with my kids and, you know, like help an animal shelter walk dogs or something. You can do a direct debit from your account. But the one thing that all of us need to do, even if you're giving your time, is that each one of us needs to hold our government accountable.
And how?
All of us.
Realistically, what do you mean by
so
that?
realistically, it's so simple, right? Who decides what? We studied this in 10th grade civics. All of us have studied it. So like our local government, our municipal corporation, that controls our waste management. I've seen everybody I know in Bombay driving around saying, what a dirty city, what a filthy city, there's waste everywhere here. I separate waste in my house. When they collect the waste, they put all the dry waste, the wet waste, the recyclables, they put it all in one truck. You know, this is happening, that's happening. People complain about these things, but what are you doing about it? And have you even written a letter to your local corporation saying, hey, what's going on with this? Why not file an RTI application after you've written a letter saying, hey, I brought this letter to your attention that our waste is not being segregated properly. What measures have you taken? You know what I'm saying? So the great thing is the internet has made it so easy for us to hold people accountable. If you have a Twitter account, tweet your local MP saying, hey, do you know that the fine for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act is only 50 rupees? Can you increase it? Like, what is the procedure to increase it? What have you done to increase it? So hold them accountable. They need us. They need us to vote for them. You know, what is important to us is important to them. Rather than making like, you know, a festival or a celebration or some like road permission or something important, why don't we tell them that all those things are important? Yes, but hey, here's issue number 16, which we've just added to our citizens' agenda. What are you doing about this? You know what I'm saying? Let's not make it a fringe issue. Let's understand that the fringe issue impacts us completely. Today, we're all sitting at home. People are saying that the coronavirus has come to all of us because it's a zoonotic disease. It came from wild animals to people. You know, every article I've written about zoonosis. In my pet shops petition, which I filed in the Honorable Delhi High Court, we argued zoonosis, you know, where we had a senior counsel, Mr. Siddharth Luthra, appearing for us, totally pro bono. We got an amazing order. My friend Gauri Moliki was the petitioner. My point is that, you know, even there we said that my lords, poaching wild animals, keeping them in cages, one on top of the other, mixing the species, they're defecating on one on top of the other. One, you know, the fecal matter of one animal is in the food of the other animal. They have open wounds. They're sick. Their immunity is compromised. What diseases are coming out of this? We have been arguing this. We filed that petition in the year 2017, 5 years on, and the whole world is sitting at home because of a zoonotic outbreak. And every animal rights person, wildlife person, conservationist, climate activist, anyone in this space has argued that this needs to stop. So we need to realize that, hey, if we're going to be cruel to animals, if we're going to be doing all these things, we are going to suffer really badly. So here is item agenda point number this. When you know, your local MP comes around asking you for votes, they do that everywhere. They ring everyone's doorbell and they open the door. Hey, listen, I vote for you, but are you going to do this? You know, you've got to make these things an issue. So we've got to write, we've got to tweet. 20 minutes of someone's week. If let me put it this way, if say for example, 1 million people or 2 million people said, I'm going to give 20 minutes of my week to increasing the fine in the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. And I'm going to do this by 1 week I'm going to tweet, 1 week I'm going to Instagram, 1 week I'm going to get my friends together and we're going to go see our local MP. 1 week we're going to have a change.org petition. 1 week we're going to have a small protest outside, like our whatever whatever it is, depending if you're in a city like Mumbai, there's like your state government. You know, in Delhi there's your parliament. So whatever. 1 week we're going to do this. If like say even 2 million people in India decided that they were going to do 20 minutes a week for this, by the end of like a year, the government would have changed the fine. That's literally all we need.
So I wanted to ask you, as someone who's in this field, of course, I understand that for a lot of people, I mean, it isn't a very paying field, but you did choose to take it up, and you feel passionate about it. And so I wanted to know if you could speak a little bit about how somebody who's interested in being in this field, but still, has to make ends meet and has to take care of themselves, like how you balance that.
So like my advice is very simple.
Yeah.
Like, somebody's a lawyer, right? They can always do a certain amount of paid work and a certain amount of pro bono work. Done. For somebody who is like, say, you have your own small business, you can do a certain amount of paid work. You can give a certain amount of your time to NGOs. For somebody who is a professional, NGOs today are like offering paid positions. Fine, the pay may not be as much as like a law firm or as much as a commercial organization, but there is like a better wage that NGOs pay today than they did many, many, many years ago. Like when I started, and again, like I don't mean to sound like a fossil, but like, like I am 36, and like 10, 11 years ago, there were hardly any NGO jobs in the animal rights space, and they didn't pay well at all. At all meaning at all. Like I was offered things like, okay, I should just, like, I may as well be honest, like I was offered things like 18,000 and 20,000 and things like that. Like what, like let's be honest, like as a young lawyer, my friends were going into firms and getting paid like 4 times what I was getting, and this is what I was getting offered. So but now things have changed. NGOs recognize that if you want good people, you need to pay them. Like people need to eat. Like it's just that simple, right? So there are well-paying NGO jobs, and if you don't manage to find one of those, you can always do so much just with 2 hours. You can do, like, look at Geeta ma'am, for example. Like she's taken on all these massive cases, but there she is also like saving people's lives and saving animal lives and stuff like that, which she was doing for us when we were there in Delhi. She was appearing in our PIs and saving lives for us. My point is that you can do anything. You can do it all. That's the thing. Life is long. We've got time. We can do it all.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I wanted to ask you that during this period of a lockdown, everyone has been coming out and speaking about how, it does sound unfortunate to make that comparison, but they say that, because of COVID, the environment is getting so much better and animals are stepping out, and it's slowed down the process of climate change. Number one, that doesn't sound like a sustainable way. It's obviously unfortunate that we would need a pandemic to have that effect. But so do you see this? What are your thoughts on how COVID has impacted the climate, and do you think this is a sustainable way of moving forward?
We need to implement innovative solutions. It's just that simple. So, for example, even for the meat, like the meat industry emits more greenhouse gas emissions than the whole transportation sector combined. So for every plane, train, and car, just like the meat industry is emitting more carbon. But then there are innovative technologies like cultivated meat, where you can get meat from a lab. So these things exist. We just need to innovate more. Do I think that it's sustainable for us to, for the population to increase further? I don't think so, and even if we look at the pandemic, like smaller countries have handled it really well, so there are benefits to having a population that isn't so large, and those are my personal views on this issue. But I think also, if we have innovative solutions, we can do so much. There are ideas that can help us live good, full lives, and in which we can also take care of the planet. Also, I don't feel that animals are stepping out more during the lockdown. I feel, there are a few cases of animals who have been, going into areas that they don't normally go into. But the truth is, the urban landscape is filled with animals. The thing is that when there's human movement, we just don't see them. We just don't pay attention to them. So if we just had a little bit of empathy, a little bit of compassion, kept food in our windows, kept water, it would be filled with birds, So we have to stop being so hostile towards nature, innovate, actually work on the innovative solutions the thing is that the people in power and the people who are like making all the decisions are often supporting lobbies and industries that aren't good for the environment. So we need to kind of change that paradigm, you know? And if we change that paradigm, things would change completely.
Thank you so much, Ambika. More power to you. And this has been amazing. Keep doing the amazing work you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.